When we were learning how to be public speakers and speak in front of the class, whether it was ninth grade and they were grading all of our ums and ahs and likes, we were told to stand still. Don't jitter. Don't move around. Don't bounce up and down in your chair. And yet, as we watch Baron Coleman, who somebody absolutely loving referred to him as Tigger at one point, we realize that movement is really important. And so Barron gave a shout out last night to Jesse on Fire, and said how phenomenal he is. And what is so interesting of it is the same movements are what Barron does. He's watching himself as they move. Now they're not in agreement on the key points, and in fact, I have moved away from Jesse altogether because I am not in alignment with what he's presenting or the reasons why he's presenting that. And so that's all I'll say on that. But I do want to say that I know I'm not that animated, kind of boring. I'm doing my best to at least move around a little, blink my eyes to know that I'm real. But I think it's still important for me to learn and grow and continue to feel more comfortable with this method so that I can continue to open up and give the insights here that quite honestly are affecting so many more individuals than I ever imagined. And hopefully you have not gone through what we've gone through, but maybe you might be more aware of somebody else when they come up and ask for help, knowing that, wait a minute, they're not crazy. They're actually telling the truth. So today, I don't want to react to the headlines. I want to go deeper, though, than what I normally go with stories, because there's a lot popping off right now. There was a time a few years ago where I told everybody that the country is coming to a point where we're going to be on our knees. We haven't gotten there yet. I told people we were getting close to the point where we were going to be in lockdowns. We went through that. I then said that we were going to go through a period of a whole year of just buckle up and hold on tight. And we went through that. And as we come into this year, I continue for over 3 years have said that by April, this is not going to look like the same country. And there's going to be hope for us for so long. And 18 months ago, I reiterated that fact. And I have a lot of reasons and analytics as to why that's so. And April may or may not be what we would call the turning point. But I absolutely believe we're on track for that. And very sadly, I believe the conflict with Iran is part of that movement. So again, the United States is not down on our knees. And we still have that breaking point to reach before people wake up. But we are getting a lot of revelations. We're able to see areas in the lights going on that we've not even been allowed to have on before. So there's so much to be grateful for as we move forward. Today's talk is going to, again, go very deep. And it's going to go deep because not only I'm going to touch on some key headlines that affect us in California and us in the United States, but I'm also going to bring this back to myself as a targeted individual. I'm not going to go too much into the story, but I am going to talk about the potential arrest from the library and now a notice of data breach that I have received. The attacks don't stop. And yet, as long as we're on this planet, I think it's extremely important to keep walking forward, walking in faith. So here, I want to start with the Supreme Court ruling today. Now, it's easy to get kind of confused or mixed feelings about this. The Supreme Court just ruled 6-3 against, ChatGPT told me a former president, against President Trump. Now, this is so important to understand. This wasn't 4-5, and this wasn't necessarily along party lines. I believe that the two dissented are much more in alignment with my thought process. However, I believe that it was reviewed based on historical data, other decisions that other people have made, which I believe is lazy law, in order to go back and look at the way that the Constitution looks at, let me see if I can hit this in here, looks at the rules, rights, and responsibility of POTUS. And so that was the deciding factor. Did the President of the United States have the right in order to issue these tariffs? And many different organizations, some that you would probably be very surprised, stepped into the ring quickly against this, saying that it punished their own small businesses here in the United States. Understand why we live in a world where I have work to the point that my fingers are sore, have all of the money dumped out of my pockets, and then just dumped literally in dump trucks or crates via USAID and the State Department, etc., into countries around the world. And yet I cannot sell my goods to countries around the world because it's very difficult to get through their tariff and taxing. But I can buy any products from around the world. And at some point, as a small business owner, it just doesn't make sense anymore. Why can't we have Buy American at least on a fair playing field? Well, in this case, Trump took a shot. This wasn't something out of the blue. This is something he's been talking about probably since the 80s, maybe longer. He gave it his best go. He had researchers research this, understood that it would be challenged, as everything that he does is. And this is why we live in the United States. He's not a dictator, but he's willing to risk what those before him have not. So I believe he made huge grounds here. But I think the really important thing to note is what SCOTUS came back with. The idea of tariffs and taxation was not at issue. The at issue part, according to my understanding, was the role of the President of the United States. They said this role or jurisdiction would fall under Congress. So to Congress, I say, stand up and do your damn jobs. Start protecting the United States. Now, we know that they won't because they've already stated that during the State of the Union, which we will be blessed with on this coming Tuesday, which is constitutionally required by the president to communicate with us and give these state addresses. But there's already a list of people who represent me that I didn't vote for, who have openly stated that they're refusing to participate, they're refusing to show up, and in fact, they're going to hold their own protest in another location. And this is what we have for our country. So again, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 against Trump. It was really against Trump, literally, the President of the United States. So Congress, it's now your move. At issue right now are the billions of dollars that have been collected already. They could set up a simple system and individuals and corporations can file for refunds. Easy. Or they can allow everybody to file thousands of lawsuits and tie up the courts. Costly. Or Congress can step up and take care of this. Decide how this needs to be handled and how, once again, we can truly have a fair country on this planet. We're so far from any level of fairness for us. And quite honestly, whoever falls under the them category, as we dump money and control, that's not helpful either. So I want to move forward here, and I'll come back to that topic because I want to read the actual article that came out. But meanwhile, California's mayor's former fiance is sentenced as an illegal foreign agent. allegedly a spy. I think that's not allegedly because the conviction now happened. A bellwether lawsuit accuses social media giants of addicting children. And in the middle of it all, you're ironically told to go to social media and react. Not verify, and not trace authority, not read the actual rulings or decisions. But right now, I want to kind of open this up and look deeper. And again, talk about being a targeted individual. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick this off right now. SCOTUS, tariff authority, and constitutional power. Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution gives Congress the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, not the president, Congress. Trump had a shot, he went for it, and got overruled. I'm still glad that he took the shot. Congress controls taxation and tariffs. Presidents use delegated authority under statutes, like trade acts and emergency powers. However, there was no documentation that Congress, under any level of emergency powers, turned over their authority for this to the president. He just took it and ran with it. Now, obviously, he did it to make it more fair, to make America first, and to help give small businesses in the United States a chance. He's talked about this. He ran on this. He was backed, and he amassed an immense amount of constitutional lawyers to research what would be the path that would optimize this. And as the money was rolling in, he deemed it extremely successful. I believe that this was going to be one of the key topics that he was going to speak about on Tuesday. I still believe he will, as one thing we can't accuse Trump of is silence, except with the Einstein files. But if SCOTUS ruled 6-3 against executive authority expansion, that suggests textual interpretation, not partisan alignment, which shows that we're finally seeing some level of reining back presidential powers. Do you recall SCOTUS also ruled that no, Biden could not pay off everybody's student debt? That was outside of his presidential powers. So the ideological difference between 5-4 matters. That just splits on pretty much party lines. But 6-3 is really a structural reboot. And as we learn the vernacular and move forward of the system, to learn more about the systems that are ruling it, it's really important to understand the ideology, the structure, and the systems. So one thing that would be helpful at this point is you could go to supremecourt.gov and start pulling up some of the decisions, announcements, rulings, and look at the facts yourself. I know many of us don't have an interest or a time, and the words can be really convoluted. In this case, I believe there were over 170 pages. It's quite a bit, but you can search the docket numbers, distinguish majority versus dissent. In this case, there were 2 dissenting opinions who said that, in fact, Trump hadn't violated. And you can start identifying constitutional clauses as citations, as I referenced above. This really helps to grab a foundation into our rights. And once again, I will point out, the U.S. Constitution was not created to protect the government from you. The U.S. Constitution was created in order to protect you from the government. So if the court punted the issue back to Congress, which officially they didn't, they just said enough, but didn't decide how it's to be unraveled, which is typical of the Supreme Court rulings. But if they did punt it back to Congress, that means that the justice determined the executive branch exceeded delegated authority. That's what was decided, not the taxes, are illegal or the tariffs are, that's not what was decided or at issue. That's separation of powers, not ideology. If you believe tariffs should protect domestic industry, your fight then is within Congress, not the courts. And that's just intellectually honest. And yet we have a group of people representing us that we didn't necessarily vote for, but was pooled by somebody else in another jurisdiction. And here we are. So I want to move on to the media. Oh, no, you know what? I do want to pull that up. I've got that marked. Let's see here. I think this is the one. I pulled up a specific article and then it locked me out. So I'm just going to go to AP News here. Trump has other tariff options after the Supreme Court strikes down his worldwide import taxes. This is AP News, and this was released, I believe, about, well, less than 2 hours ago. And, you know, again, it's really, oh, here we go, by Paul Weisman. And it says, Washington AP, President Donald Trump still has options to keep taxing imports aggressively, even after the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs he imposed last year on nearly every country on earth. Now, remember, we've talked about why he did it for the United States, but Trump is a deal master. He used those as part of leverage, either shape up or you will get financial penalties. Because the only thing leaders truly care about are finance and power. And that was the only way he had without war in order to shift the relationships that had been, quite honestly, deeply damaged under former presidents. The justices didn't buy the president's sweeping claims of authority to impose tariffs as he saw fit. But Trump can reuse tariff powers he deployed in his first term and can reach for others, including one that dates back to the Great Depression. Again, this is according to the AP article. It's hard to see any pathway here where tariffs end, said Georgetown trade law professor Kathleen Clausen. I'm pretty convinced he could rebuild the tariff landscape he is now using for other authorities. And then Trump has claimed nearly boundless authority to impose tariffs under a 1977 IEEPA, International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's where the word emergency powers came in. But opponents argued before the Supreme Court that that power wasn't necessary because Congress delegated tariff power to the White House in several other statutes. So we will look for more exploration on this, though it carefully limited the ways the president could use that authority. So that's according to AP, and that's their reassessment as they continue to review the ruling. So I wanted to move on here to media framing and local corruption claims. ChatGPT told me to be extremely careful. Again, there's a lot of things we're not allowed to talk about. Things like illegal foreign agent, I'm not supposed to mention. However, it then points out FARA registration, which we're becoming extremely familiar with, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. That is what an illegal foreign agent is. It can be legal if they declare it. If there's no declaration, then there's a violation. But it doesn't simply mean espionage. Although that's what the news reported, I don't have the documents in front of me, so anything here is just allegedly. So how do local officials get vetted? How do they get approved to run for office and then get a backing of individuals of signatures to get on a ballot and then get elected to a position? And to that, I suggest you ask Kamala or Waltz or Newsom, or actually the funders behind them. Why did they allow this? Who is it that elects them? And what due diligence do the voters actually do? Now, Candace made a very interesting statement about Trump. Trump became a victim. And because of that victim, people rose up to support him and they voted him in. Not solely for that, but that was a main initiative. Butler probably helped. But he's not a victim in the Einstein files. There are victims, and his silence there not only is not acceptable, but he was specifically asked before he was put back in as president whether or not this would be a priority, and those documents would be released, and there would be help and healing for the victims. So who elects these individuals? How do they get the money behind them? And we're talking millions, if not billions, to get into office these days. I've talked about running for the school board where you might get a stipend of $400 or $600 a month, or the mayor of Pacifica who makes $750 a month as the mayor. What do they do in order to vet these individuals? When I asked her personally, I said, was everybody standing in a line and everybody took one step back and all of a sudden she was a person ahead? That kind of seems like it is in small towns. But anytime there's financial money, the greed comes in. Lobbyists take over. And all of a sudden running for school board in order to get stipends of $400 to $600 a month, it can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to run for those seats, because those who want to do construction costs, contracts, elections, electricians, lobby books to the teachers, whatever it is, they will gladly pay to put somebody in place. It's the way our system is set up. So what is interesting is to check actual FEC filings. Look up federal court sentencing documents via PACER, P-A-C-E-R. There's a lot you can find there. And verify official biographies. I talked yesterday about Ilhan Omar's biography, which is quite odd, the amount of violence that she is threatening people today with, that she is apparently proud that she has done through the years. We don't treat people like that in this country. We don't beat people up and put a smile on our face. It's sick, it's disgusting, and it's twisted. There's a lot more going on in Minnesota and Minneapolis and her jurisdiction than what we're being told. I believe there's a lot more bodies to be found as well. So the social media addiction law, let me see. I don't think this went. Yeah, it's completely skipping my resources again and picking and choosing what it wants to present. So let me talk about this a little bit more. I have the article up here. And let's see, which one is it? California, SCOTUS. Okay, let me just pull this up. Arcadia. Okay, so in fact, all of this was wiped out. I did a whole piece on China's influence in California, and ChatGPT has removed all of that as well. So I want to read this from the source that came up is very odd. They're all extremely obscure. I've never heard any of these before. And as I try to move around it, ChatGPT blocks me and keeps giving it these obscure sources. But let me see if I can get out of yeah, I'm going to go to CBS. I like to at least grab names that we're known of. Actually, here's the LA Times. Let me see if that one will open up. And there's two stories here that we're going to go through. But here, this is MSN, Clara Harder, and it says it was released for 1 week ago. So this is the title. He worked for and romanced Arcadia councilwoman, and he was a covert agent for China, according to the conviction, is what MSN is reporting. So he not only worked for her, but he was intimately involved with her. She, in fact, they have a recording of her introducing her partner and fiance. And the next clip is her saying, absolutely not. You prove that he was my fiance. Like we didn't have access to the other video. At this point, people need to understand what exists. But this is what the story states. A Southern California man acted as a covert agent for the People's Republic of China and helped local council member win office. Now, if you recall, this is the same pattern that we saw allegedly with Mayor Karen Bass. All the Chinese influence that helped get her elected and then got lucrative contracts, allegedly. It's also very important because as the Olympics starts to, all the funding and the infrastructure and the bringing of the Olympics to California, specifically into Los Angeles, they're having influence on that directive as well. So a Southern California man acted as a covert agent for the People's Republic of China and helped a local council member win office, the office of mayor, in the hopes that this new political star would promote pro-Chinese policies in America, according to federal court documents. While the political leader in question remains in office, the agent is behind bars. The person was 65 of Chino Hills and sentenced Monday to 4 years in federal prison after pleading guilty in October to one count of acting as an illegal agent of a foreign government, according to this article. And that person had worked for years as an illegal agent for the People's Republic of China, submitting reports to high-level government officials on the work that he carried out on their behalf, according to a sentencing memorandum written by federal prosecutors. This work included countering Falun Gong, a spiritual practice banned in China that has followers in Southern California, and pro-Taiwanese independence forces, as well as performing surveillance of the then president of Taiwan during April 2023 visit to the United States and publishing pro-PRC propaganda on an online news site. He was an activist. He was shaping with propaganda. And as you might recall, it wasn't that many years ago where New York City shut down and arrested individuals from China for setting up their own police precinct to monitor their people. What's also interesting here, I'm not going to continue with this particular MSN story, but do you remember, let me see if I can find California. So again, CNN, let me see if that will, okay, 2025, July. So this wasn't even a year ago. Let me just pull up this Fox article. This is Fox News. And California authorities take 21 children into custody amid surrogacy scheme investigation. Children between 2 months and 13 years old are now in the care of a welfare agency. 21 children, 2 months old to 13 years old. This was linked, this is again in Los Angeles. 15 children taken from the couple's home, as well as an additional 6 children were discovered living elsewhere and now under the care of the Child Welfare Agency. The children were between the ages of 2 months and 13, according to the Associated press. This article by Fox News in July of 2025 labels this California authorities investigating a surrogacy scam. So if we go back to the mayor of Arcadia, whose fiance or non-fiance, however she wants to categorize him today, that went to jail for 4 years on Monday, all allegedly or under my opinion or however that is also in LA County. And what I know of those areas, and they buy very large homes, just like the one that we all saw on TV for this surrogacy scam. And then they bring women in. They can be pregnant when they get here. Often they're very pregnant when they get here. They have their babies. And then the babies are either allowed to stay here, as in this case, they kept the children, or they're sent back home in order to be raised under the People's Republic of China guidance. And then because they're citizens, they come back later. And as citizens, they can run for office. They can have all the rights that you and I have. This is why our country has been derailed. It's mass houses. Neighbors know about it. There's nothing they can do because the government hasn't made it illegal. And yet Arcadia is one of those towns where homes have been pointed out to me. They're all over LA County and San Bernardino County and Riverside County. And I've been pointed out homes in San Diego County. I have no doubt they're in my county as well. I just haven't particularly been pointed that out yet. But you see the influx of people coming. They hide in the homes. Some babies never really come and go. They're not pushed in carriages or taken care of. They're all hidden. And then you see new faces and new faces. And what's interesting is during the press conference, when the mayor of LA was saying that this was never her fiance, to go ahead and prove it, I could barely understand her because her accent was so very difficult to get through because she was not born in the country. And at this point, this needs to be a deciding factor. If somebody has your values, which is part of understanding and researching and vetting an individual, they probably lived a life experience that has shown them a way that can enlighten us and guide us. But I have to say, that's why to be president of the United States, you have to be a born U.S. citizen, U.S. soil, in order to reach that. There are some protections in place. In this case, who is choosing these individuals? Who is funding their election? I'll tell you, it's not you and I regularly voting. And if you look through the voting records, you're going to find more manipulation. And as we're being proven, just like Swalwell, they become targeted individuals. But we've also learned from, I think her name is Lee, L-E-I, that any person living in the United States that is a descendant or Chinese born is still under Chinese control. Any family they have in China is under watch and harmed, allegedly, based on actions and results created in the United States. This is a war, and we've been talking about that for a long time. But until people step up and acknowledge it, why would you elect somebody like that to represent your values and your community? There are plenty of other individuals in the community that have business experience, entrepreneur experience, educational experience, leadership experience. We'll see what happens with this one. So again, those were two stories wrapped in one, and they're very much tied together. The next issue I wanted to talk about is the social media addiction lawsuit. This is happening in California right now. I believe they said it's going to be 2 weeks. Let me just pull this up as Well, again, AI just kind of chooses their own sources. It's referencing 83,600 different sources, with AP being the primary source, but it's given me allaboutLawyer.com as the key reference. So let me read what allaboutLawyer.com has. Meta is facing a landmark California lawsuit alleging its platforms deliberately addict children, causing mental health harm. With CEO Mark Zuckerberg testifying in a bellwether trial. The overview of the case presented here is the lawsuit KGM versus Meta Platforms Incorporated et al. Is being heard in Los Angeles, California Superior Court, and involves a 20-year-old woman identified as KGM, who claims that Instagram and YouTube deliberately addicted her as a child. She also claims that Instagram and YouTube deliberately addicted her as a child, worsening her depression and her suicidal thoughts. The case is considered a bellwether trial, meaning its outcome could influence thousands of similar cases filed nationwide. TikTok and Snap, and I apologize, yesterday I believe I said Instagram, but TikTok and Snap, so here's my correction, settled prior to trial, leaving Meta and Google as the remaining defendants. So what are the allegations outlined against Meta? Plaintiffs argue that Meta designed features such as infinite scroll, autoplay, and beauty filters. And I want to pause here. There's been a few times in my life where I felt like a letdown when I felt I reached the end of the internet. Now, I remember getting a Commodore 64 and having to write my own code, literally, in order to build the little Pong game that went back and forth. But when you watch YouTube and it's endless and all of a sudden there's nothing more to give you, it's a letdown. Now, if you're a child and you've grown up in this world, when you and I were children, if we had the TV on at night, all of a sudden we'd see the black and white ant races, for lack of a better term, go across the screen, usually after the national anthem, and that was it until the broadcasting the next day. There was a cutoff. There is no cutoff now. It doesn't stop. It's meant to keep drawing and drawing them in. So here it says plaintiffs argue that Meta designed features such as infinite scroll, autoplay, and beauty filters to maximize engagement among minors, likening the platform to a digital casino. Internal documents presented in court suggest that Meta employees described Instagram as like a drug and acknowledged the addictive potential of its features. The lawsuit claims these design choices contributed to mental health issues, low self-esteem, and even self-harm behavior among young users. The legal claims, as outlined by the same article. The case relies on product liability and negligence theories, bypassing traditional Section 230 protections that we've heard so much about that shield tech companies from liability for user-generated content. The court has ruled that features like autoplay and reward-based notifications are considered product designs, not speech, making Meta potentially liable like a manufacturer of a defective product. The plaintiff must prove that Instagram's design was a substantial factor in causing her documented mental health harm. I'll let you know that when an individual is challenged on a mental health issue, opposing counsel doesn't come in with puppy dogs and ice cream. They come in with the weapons and blasters and tanks and want to rip apart every moment of that individual's life. This person is completely being re-victimized as they go through this process, which is why most of these cases never come forward. They settle out of court. not just to not make the information or the settlement public, but to truly protect the victims from having their lives emotionally ripped about. Because the issue is, even if this person wins, the ongoing scar of a trial like this can last a lifetime. True or not is not found in a courtroom. Attorneys at this level win, and they win at any cost. This is a hard case to push forward based on mental health harm. Quite honestly, especially in California, that has done everything possible to attack our children over the last decade or so. Allegedly, in my opinion. So if I continue with the article here, Meta's defense. Meta denies the allegations, arguing that KGM's mental health struggles were influenced by pre-existing family and personal issues. It's your fault. And that the company implemented safety features, parental controls, and teen account restrictions. CEO Mark Zuckerberg testified that Meta does not aim to make Instagram addictive for children, and emphasize the company's focus on building a sustainable community. What's interesting is Zuckerberg also testified to the fact that there is no way to vet the age of the person on the platform. So that's a little bit of an overview. The trial began in January of 2026. Zuckerberg testified on the 18th of February, so that was 2 days ago. And the total trial is expected to last 6 to 8 weeks, with a verdict potentially coming out in March, April timeframe. So we're looking forward to this. The ruling in favor of KGM could lead to monetary damage and platform-wide changes. So this is really historic and truly a bellwether for social media. Now, I talked about it's expected before the next major presidential election in 2028 that we will be seeing another attack on all the social media in the United States based on Western Europe and other countries in order to take away the control and the power and silence them to not help get another Republican elected. So we're really keeping our eye out for that as well. So again, the social media addiction lawsuit Meta case, because it's Meta et al. And it's Meta and Google that are the two that are still standing. It really talks about how mass tort litigation works. What plaintiffs must prove are a design defect. It was foreseeable. There was causation, and there's actual provable damages. So if you go read the complaint, don't just read the headlines, but you can look into under the cover as well and get a better understanding of what's going on here and how to protect your children. So this is filed in Los Angeles County Superior Court. Now, from the business model, these companies started out not about revenue. They started out with eyeballs, how long they would keep your eyeballs on the page and how often you would come back. So they were very motivated to create an addictive situation. There's a lot that's come out with Facebook manipulating emotions. In this case, the business model is engagement metrics, the dopamine hit, right? Algorithmic amplification and behavioral reinforcement loops. Keep rewarding you for coming back and bringing your friends too. The dopamine loop architecture is a gamification theory technique that is very persuasive and actually embedded in the tech design. And again, this isn't about hysteria, it's about understanding the systems. I now want to move on to our favorite governor, California Governor Newsom. There's a donor out of Florida who stepped up and said that how did he phrase this here? Newsom is dead in the water. What's very interesting is as I searched that, another news article made the same reference to Trump. Different reasons, but let's just use the same terminology, which shows me that ChatGPT of some level, AI, is behind that regeneration. So watch articles where keywords are recycled over and over again, especially as they go back and forth among stories or party lines. So the New York Times and Fox framing and independent polling data are all starting to pop up right now like popcorn. So you want to make sure that you're not using fact check sites. You're using sites that you're comfortable with, that aligns with your values and historically has been proven to be honest in this area. Typically, that's not mainstream media. Separate editorial from reporting. And with AI right now, it gets even more difficult to understand there's even a human behind those words. If it's somebody using a puppet, or if the bot just created the scenario on its own. And track funding flows. Understand who's funding what you're being given. So the article is, and I'm going to read it off my phone because I had to do a screenshot of it here. Okay, this is what it says. This was New York Times, and it was a snippet that was posted by Fox News. Newsom's record on blast. 1, least affordable state in the nation. Here you go. 2, highest income tax rate in the nation. 1 in 200 Californians are homeless. Get an understanding of what that means. 1 in 200 were homeless in 2024. And tied for the highest supplemental poverty rate, meaning we have the highest along with another state, which is probably New York, but not declared here, that we're paying people to stay poor, that poverty mindset. And because we're paying them, more and more people come to also be paid to stay poor. And the final point is that California leaves nearly every 2 minutes. And who's replacing them? We saw individuals like the very fine mayor of Arcadia. So I wanted to move here to information warfare and being a targeted person. This is ridiculous for anybody to admit that they're targeted and openly discuss it. And yet this is where we're at today. We now have enough evidence and information, even when the court hearings are obscured and data lost, to prove that this is real, it is happening. The psychological effects of constant outrage media, algorithmic targeting of ads on the phone, are another version of gang stalking, confirmation bias reinforcement, and narrative priming. When you consume high conflict content constantly, your nervous system enters threat detection mode. As I have stated, we're often in a survival mode in the workplace now, taking knives out of our back. For many of us, leaving our homes becomes very dangerous. And this is why I wanted to talk about this right now. It's part of the neurological attack. It affects our DNA. Rather than talking about the topics I wanted to talk here, ChatGPT is telling me to just guide the direction, let you know about media diet discipline, primary source verification, and cognitive bias awareness. That'll build strength and not paranoia. Let me look at this real fast. I clipped an article, and this was February 19th. at right after lunchtime, Pacific time, by Kurt Knudsen, labeled as the Cyber Guy Report on Fox News. And the article is titled Cybercrime. Panera Bread Data Breach Exposes 5.1 million customers. This is another WTF moment. Hackers leaked customer contact information after Panera confirmed a cyber security incident. Now, last I went to Panera Bread, and I've been there less than a handful of times. I don't buy into the hype. That's not where I spend my money. It was a soup and sandwich kind of shop. Why is it amassing 5.1 million customers, people who came to them to buy a sandwich for lunch? And now they just lost their digital footprint because a sandwich company got greedy and stole their data. When was the last time you went to Panera? Did you tell them, yes, you can sell my credit card information, my name, any data that you can track about me? Every time I come in here and you grab data from my phone, maybe I put on an app, you can scrape that data and sell it too. I don't know the depth of the data breach. Quite honestly, I didn't bother reading the article. I'm just disgusted that a sandwich and soup shop has amassed that much data. Nobody's surprised. We know that that's what these companies do. They amass your data and they sell it. And they sell it over and over again. You are the product. You think you're buying an overpriced sandwich. And in fact, you're just being lured in, often under some cult-like premise of Panera Bread is the company of the year, just like, what was that burrito place? I can't even think of it, but you know what I'm saying there. But I bring this up because as my background is in cybersecurity, managing a digital footprint specifically here in Silicon Valley, that's how I got to work with with autonomous vehicles from a security perspective. And yet, when I do public speaking, I tell companies, if you don't need the data, you don't take it and you don't keep it. It's quite simple. Don't put your hand in the cookie jar and then get caught with a bunch of cookies in your hand that somebody stole. The slap on the wrist is not going to cut it for much longer. And this is why I have it under being a targeted individual. As I mentioned to you, I was threatened with arrest at a City of San Jose library just last week. Was it or maybe 2 weeks ago now? I don't know. I did get back my initial Freedom of Information Act request, and I plan to go through that this weekend. They had 10 days to respond with what they will provide and another 14 days to provide the rest. They did turn that around quite quickly. There's downloads and links, so I need to go through that. I don't know if the video surveillance is going to be there or if they're going to be upfront about what the employees, whoever they were, I don't even know, did. But I did ask about mental health illness and their hiring practices, their policies around treating customers. So we'll see what comes out of that. But I don't think that that was odd. I think what happens is this is happening so often that once again they came across the wrong woman. And because I am constantly targeted everywhere I go, it's just a reality, it's a fact. At some point you can think, don't be narcissistic, it's not about you. And that's what I thought for decades, until finally, during my hearing against the US federal government under the Obama administration, I found out that it is about me. And yet, immediately after that, this is the notice I get from the City of San Jose. Notice of data breach. The City of San Jose is committed to protecting the information we maintain. We are writing to inform you of a data security incident that may have involved some of your information. This notice explains the incident and measures we have taken since and steps you may take in response. You know, we get this all the time. Oops, sorry. I slipped and fell out of bed and dumped all your personal private information about your entire life and your Social Security out. But it's okay. We paid for you to have coverage for 12 months. Don't you think the thieves know? Just wait out 12 months and then it's fair game. Once that information is out there, you never get it back. It's just like maybe a bucket of, let's say, whole milk. It has some white color to it. And you drop a little bit of color in it. Maybe a beautiful, bright green. You can never get that green out again. It's in. It starts seeping all the way through the paint color. And then somebody will come along and stir it and sell off pieces. You never get that back. So then the next sentence is, what happened? On January 12th, 2026, we learned that a workforce member, what the hell does that even mean? Is that an employee? Is that a contractor? Lost a USB. Now, again, I have worked in security for a long time. There has never, ever, ever been any protocol that I have seen that allows people's private information to be put on a portable USB drive. The thumb drive on January 9th that contains information regarding current and former City of San Jose employees. I have not worked for the city in over 2 decades. This was not an emergency to help me out with any information and put my data on it. Why was my data from over 2 decades ago on a USB drive? And we immediately launched an investigation and notified law enforcement. So I'm in the process of filing an Open Records Act to get a copy of that enforcement filing. But here, this is the kicker. What information was involved? So before it says, hey, this notice just explains that it was a general incident. It's happened before. We take this very seriously. But right here it says, what information was involved? Through our investigation, we determined that the files within the USB drive contain your name and your Social Security number. And you know what it doesn't say is whether or not it contained anybody else's. Now, I would believe it's probably a vaster number. If they're going to steal, they're going to steal on a large level. But this is massive. So it says, what are we doing? Well, although to date we have no evidence that any of your information was actually viewed, meaning we saw that your name and your Social Security number was on that USB drive, but we don't know if anybody actually looked at it, accessed it, or certainly if anybody misused it, because that would never happen. Out of an abundance of caution, we wanted to just politely let you know. No, this is because it's law. They had to let me know and assure me that they take it seriously. So we're going to offer you a complimentary 1-year membership to a private company where you can now give them your Social Security number and they can illegally track you and leak your data. And this is to help you out. So what you can do, we recommend that you remain vigilant. Be aware. Well, you know what I can do is, again, I'm asking for the information under an Open Records Act of the actual arrest law enforcement filing and filing a suit against the City of San Jose. First of all, they're hiring individuals they should not be hiring. I cannot get a job with the city anymore because I'm a citizen. I'm not priority. And yet they're hiring individuals who this happens all the time with. And my tax dollar is being paid to this third-party contractor for I don't know how many. It's inexcusable. They get you coming and they get you going. It's disgusting. So whether you go to Panera and you allow somebody to make you a sandwich and steal your information, or you go to the library and they have full access to your name, address, email address, phone number, birth date, or you're an employee of a company which has sold your data over and over and over again. And if you say, no, they didn't, are you an employee of a company that has a separate medical plan, a separate insurance plan, any other employee benefits? They sold your data to those companies. It's never ending. It's worse than Mac-a-mole. So today I continue my diligence in working with the FBI in order to help Beverly and push through the absolute incompetence and crimes that we face on a daily basis. Even when we keep our homes clean and secure our own data, we are being undermined every step of the way. So the next time somebody asks you for a copy of your ID, you tell them no. And the next time somebody asks, we need your social security number, you tell them no. And the next time you go to a doctor's office and they give you an electronic form, not even documents to sign, and say, just sign here, you tell them no. For over a decade, I've required that documents be printed and I sign them after I read the hard documents so I know they're not changed. And that saved me when Apple came after me for violating 13 NDAs that was signed by Stephanie in HR on behalf of me. I never even met a Stephanie in HR, but it certainly wasn't my signature, and it officially said it was somebody else. So again, I opened today with a conversation that the Supreme Court of the United States, or SCOTUS, had slapped Trump. So he stands up again and points his fingers to Congress. We keep moving along. We're in a fight here to get our country back so we don't literally end up on our knees. That we can stand proud, raise our children so they can also have the proverbial home with land and a white picket fence, a dog and a beautiful family. That dream is still real and it's out there for so many, but we can't lose sight of it. So in closing, I wanted to say the court reminded that the executive branch has limits. It reeled it back. Congress now owns the tariff authority. What is Congress going to do? Local politics require voter diligence. Pay attention, step up. Don't allow individuals that don't speak your language represent you. There's a baseline. We can embrace other cultures, but we have to understand what cultures we're embracing, who is pulling their puppet strings, who is funding them, and the reasons why they're being put in those particular cities. And when traffic lights are involved, be more vigilant. Tech companies are being faced with an accountability test right now in court. And media ecosystems are really being challenged. If you want fairness in trade policy, pressure Congress. If you want transparency, read the filings. And if you want the truth, follow the feed. Because truth doesn't scream out loud. We're not the ones who are making all the noise, handling the protest, throwing water bottles. We're just the ones turning the lights on and hoping somebody can hear us in our corner of the world. So once again, my name is Barbara. I'm based here in the place where hell froze over yesterday, Silicon Valley. Again, the memory on this phone was full and the other one was dead from taking the video in Yosemite. So I scooped up some snowballs outside and put them in the freezer to prove to my son that we had snow right here in the yard. And it melted within 60 seconds or so. What I didn't grab was gone, but it was literally a moment of hell freezing over. So once again, this is Tech Reality. I'm Barbara. I'm now starting to become more active once again on Twitter, so you can find me over there at Tech Reality Barbara. And once again, have a phenomenal day. Talk to you soon. I'll look for the comments.